Great. So thank you, everyone. We just want to talk about the problem of basically data governance and basically cataloging data at scale. And just kind of a little bit of a background on what we've been talking about at this conference with Unity Catalog. So Unity is basically our solution for fine-grained governance and being able to do this at scale on top of the data lake and be able to do it with high performance and at the same time make this just seamless integrations for partners like Atlan. So we're super excited about this. So data governance today, really complex problem. You have to add permissions on top of things in the data lake, which could be file sources, could be physical data sources, could be columns, could be tables. It's just a really, really hard problem. So what happens is everyone ends up basically creating access permissions and things on top of tables once those are created in the lake, but you have these add-on tools and you're trying to do this on top of Hive, and it just gets to be a really complex problem to try and manage at scale. And access permissions on those, they're not very robust. As data changes, as schema changes, as you get drift, these things just become a continuous problem. And then of course you have ML models on top of that, and now you have like 4 governance models you're trying to manage. So what we did, this was basically our impetus and our motivation to do this with Unity Catalog, is we want to be able to provide just an absolute best-in-class experience for governance on top of the data lake. And one of the things, the capabilities with this, which we've talked about a lot, but it's centralized metadata, centralized management, basically data access controls. You get Lineage automatically, so as what your product is able to use. We're continuously capturing Lineage. There's nothing you have to do to instrument code. We're not harvesting this after the fact. It's basically coming straight, and it's basically on every operation you get Lineage automatically. Same with auditing. Best in class, what we're going for there is right now we still audit every event, and we'll give you this, and if you have to do ETL it yourself, you can, but what we want to do and what's coming in the next couple quarters is we're going to give you a system table with audit logs directly in that. And then, of course, data sharing. One of the things that I'll mention there just really quickly is Unity Catalog acts as the Delta sharing service. So if you have Unity Catalog, you can automatically use Delta sharing. Key concepts. Without Unity Catalog, every workspace used to have its own Hive metastore. Ways to get around that customers always used is they would basically set up their own external Hive metastore and then connect multiple workspaces to that. Experience wasn't great. It didn't scale. It wasn't awesome. So with Unity, we automatically give you a cross workspace metastore solution that's available across all of your workspaces. And simplified data, and I won't say too much here, but one of the things that I will mention is, in driving what we're doing with our partners, the way that we have basically instrumented Unity to be able to access data is everything is done with a 3-layer namespace. So you get catalog, schema, table. Makes it really, really easy for our partners and our vendors in this space to be able to integrate with us. And lastly, our Lineage solution, we talked about this already. The thing that I'll mention here again, though, is that this is all captured in real time, and it adheres to our security model. So if you don't have access to see tables and things that should appear in your Lineage graph, you won't see them. And before I turn it over here, just want to mention, this problem, we're still solving this at the level of, your data lake. There's a lot of other things that need to be cataloged on top of that, and that's why I'm really excited to be partnering with Atlan on this. So please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. So we're going to jump to a product demo very, very soon, but before that, I wanted to take 5 minutes and talk to you about Atlan, our founding story, and why we do what we do. So high level, at Atlan, we think of ourselves as an active metadata platform. Today, we power teams like Plaid, VWork, Monster, NewsCop, Unilever, so on. We were actually recently recognized as the top right leader in the Forrester Wave for enterprise data catalogs for DataOps, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But the reason we founded Atlan was because we actually started as a data team ourselves. So a few years ago, we were a data team that was running a ton of data science for social good projects globally. So at one point, we were processing data for 500 million Indian citizens and billions of pixels of satellite imagery a day, trying to solve problems like national level healthcare and poverty alleviation. which on the outside sounds really cool, but on the inside, it was not cool at all. It was a lot of chaos for our team. So what you see on the screen, these are actually real-life Slack messages from our own data team. What does this column name mean? Which data set should I use for this analysis? The number on this dashboard is broken. I remember this one time when a cabinet minister called me at 8 in the morning and said, Prakalpa, the number on this dashboard is broken. And I remember opening up my laptop, pulling up the dashboard, frantically hoping that nothing was wrong. And I looked at the dashboard, there was a 2x spike in the data. And clearly that was wrong. But there was nothing I could do at that point. So I said, sir, I'll call you back. And then I called my project manager, who called my analyst, who called my engineer. My engineer pulled out audit logs, but he couldn't troubleshoot it because he didn't know what the variables actually meant. So analyst, engineer, project manager, all together, I think 4 people, 8 hours to figure out what went wrong. And in that moment, obviously our team lost agility, but most importantly, our trust broke in our team, right? At that moment, I couldn't answer to my business stakeholder why a number wasn't looking right. At the same time, even I was questioning whether my data engineer was doing his job or whether the pipeline really broke, right? A few days later, the analyst on that project quit. He was the only person who knew everything about our data. And I had to deliver the project the next week. I promised our clients that we would. And this person walked out of the door. And I remember cajoling him for 3 hours and saying, please don't leave. He didn't agree. I went up to our terrace that morning in the office and I cried for 3 hours because I had no idea how I was going to deliver this project. And woke up the next morning and we said, we just can't be in this situation again as a team. So we actually started an internal project that we called the assembly line. We got our data team together and said, how do we actually make our team agile and resilient and build things that are reusable and reproducible? We actually tried to buy a solution. So we went out and evaluated all the data catalogs that existed in the market. We failed 3 times in buying a solution and getting it implemented. So we were really forced to build. So we built tooling for our own team for 2 years to make our team more agile and effective. We made our team 6 times more agile in that time. We went on to do things like build India's national data platform, which is the largest public sector data lake of its kind globally. But what was really cool about that project was it was built by an 8-member team in 12 months. So it was one of the fastest of its kind globally as well. And the reason we were able to do it was because we fundamentally rethought some components of what metadata and data catalogs should look like. So traditionally, data catalogs fail. And they fail because they're passive. One, they're siloed. Right? So if you think about as an end user, when I'm in the dashboard and say, can I trust this dashboard? The last thing I want to do at that point is jump into this other tool, figure out my login, search for the dashboard, look at the lineage, and then figure out if I can trust it, right? As an end user, I want context where I am when I need it. Second, they're generic. They treat each and every one of our consumers the same, right? The data engineer, the analyst, the engineer, the analytics engineer, the business user. But the thing is that context means very, very different things to all of us different users. The same table, when an analyst looks at it, they care about column descriptions and frequency distribution. That same table, when a data engineer looks at it, they care about did the pipeline succeed or fail? Did the data quality test pass or fail, right? So there is no such thing as a single pane of glass. There's a single pane of glass for every single user in your ecosystem. And third, they're incredibly manual to set up, right? One, from a setup perspective. Today, from an automation perspective, you could mine through SQL query history and deduce who the owners or experts of your data assets are. But traditional ecosystems don't do this. But they also are manual in the sense that they don't actually help you use metadata programmatically inside your organizations. So let's pick a use case, right? If we have usage metadata from our BI tool, we should be able to say that 90% of my users log in at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. And you should be able to use that to auto-scale up your compute workloads and update your pipeline at 9:45, and auto-scale down everything 2 hours later when your users log out. But traditionally, metadata tends to be passive. You're only using it for specific use cases. You're not able to actually drive real value out of this. And so we started rethinking, what does that mean? How do you go from passive metadata to really activating metadata? So for example, when you're in a BI tool, what you're seeing on the left, this is actually a screenshot from Looker. Can your end users actually get information and context on, hey, the pipeline broke upstream, don't use this data right now, we can't trust it. Or in Slack, when someone messages, what does annual recurring revenue mean, a Slack bot can directly actually just answer that question rather than having them to go anywhere else, right? Second, how do you think about personalization? Netflix creates personalized experiences for you and me. Why can we not create similar personalized experiences for our end users? So in Atlan, for example, we have this concept that we call personas and purposes, which actually allows us to personalize the experience of context. So if a data engineer is filtering, they're going to filter by Airflow DAG status and data quality tests, versus a business user is not going to look at any of this because they, frankly, don't care. And how do you go from manual to autonomous? Some of the use cases that I talked about, we have customers that are integrating metadata into their CI/CD pipelines, using it for cost optimization, security optimization, use cases that metadata can power programmatically rather than just as a manual catalog. And so with that, I'm actually going to jump into, we're super excited to actually work with Databricks. We were a launch partner for Unity Catalog that was launched just yesterday. I want to actually jump into an actual live demo of the product to give you a sense of what this actually means in real life. Okay. All right. Cool. So what you see on the screen, this is an Atlan workspace screen. What Atlan does is we actually bring together all of your data assets in your ecosystem, right? So this could be your data lake, warehouses, BI dashboards, pipelines, queries. All of these are a data asset inside of the org. So what you see right on top, this is a master Google-like search ecosystem. We have things like Command K, just makes it really easy for you to get to the context that you need. So for example, as you see here, I have access, I'm Prakalpa. This is super personalized to me and my role inside the organization. In this case, I'm actually going to be a data engineer. And what you can see is you can actually see I have access to 6,000 assets. Some of these are tables. Some of these are queries. You can see, this is across a couple of different sources. So you can see some Databricks tables. You can see some Snowflake tables. You can see some Glue tables. You can see your business terms. And you can see a bunch of your Tableau dashboards and pieces like that. Now, what you see here is the reason I called it a workspace is because you actually see a bunch of questions and comments that your team is doing right here, right? So you can see Slack conversations that your team is having about your data assets right here, recent announcements that have happened, elements like this. So let's pick one of these use cases, right? So I can see my boss just sent out a message saying, I'm looking at this order dashboard and this CAC number looks totally off. What's going on? This is something that we're pulling directly from Slack. And so I start my day and I say, I need to go fix this problem. Now I'm starting at 6,000 assets, which is actually like, I have no idea. Like he just said CAC. I have no idea which dashboard he's talking about, any of those things, right? So I jump from now, I can say, I actually just want to go into my personalized experience as a data engineer. I jump into my personalized curated view for a data engineer. So you can see when I jump in, on the left side, Airflow is auto-toggled and opened up. DBT is auto-toggled and opened up. A bunch of other things are not, like owners and certifications, which, for example, if you were a business user, this is probably what would actually be opened up for you in your landing screen, right? And you can jump between personas and ecosystems like that. But going back into this flow as a data engineer, I can see now I have just 184 assets. So it's actually come down to a smaller number of assets that are curated for me, for my experience. My boss said CAC, so I can say, how do I go from 184? I search for CAC. Atlan's intelligent in the sense that you can see CAC is what I searched for, and it's actually giving me customer acquisition cost that's available right here. So there are like synonym match and pieces like that you can do. I filter, I get down now to 4 assets. I can see one of these is verified, so it looks like this might be the one that my end users or stakeholders are actually using. I can look at it on the left. I can see that actually it's tied into customer acquisition cost. Maybe this looks like the right one, and now I can jump into this. So we're starting now at a Tableau dashboard. Now, every asset in Atlan has a unique shareable URL that's associated with it. It's almost the 360 single source of truth for a data asset. So the way you think about this is, when you onboard an engineer, you just share a link to a GitHub code repo, right? It has your code, your documentation, your revisions, all the context to your code is available right there. So what we've tried to say is, what does context for a data asset look like, and how do we bring the context from every other part of the ecosystem? Where does this data come from? Who else is using it? Can I trust it? How do you bring all of that and create that single source of truth profile in some ways? So I can jump in here. Now I say, okay, this looks like it's the right dashboard. Let me go troubleshoot and see why something could be wrong. So the first thing I do is I probably want to jump to Lineage. Now this is where our ability to create cross-lineage across ecosystems actually comes in. So what you can see here, we're now at the average order dashboard. I can start drilling back. So you can see I went from my Tableau dashboard to a Databricks table in this case. All of this is at a column level, so I can actually look at what the columns are that are associated with this, and I can keep working backwards. I work back to clicks, and I can actually see, hey, here's a table that seems to have an issue that's marked with it. I click on it. On the right side, I can see that actually Airflow has actually populated via an API token that there's been a data load failure. So looks like the Airflow DAG that's responsible for populating this table actually missed out. And I can start seeing now that, hey, this actually populates this dashboard that my boss was actually working with. So it possibly looks like this could be a challenge. At this point, what I could do is I could basically go in here. This is where we actually bring in elements. So let's go back to like this table, right, which is marked as an issue. A real important element of activating metadata is bringing it back into your day-to-day workflows. So lineage graphs are really pretty, but how do you act on lineage graphs when you're doing root cause analysis? This is where, for example, we've actually made things like Jira, Slack come alive right here. So what I could do is I can go into Jira, I can say, hey, actually, this data asset already has a pipeline load failure issue that's tagged with it. If this wasn't the case, I could actually go in and create an issue right here for me to go in and work with. So what I can do at this point, I can basically take the link, I can jump back into that Slack conversation that my boss was having, and I can say, looks like a pipeline failure. When this happens, this actually comes back into your overall flow. So let's say I come back into my average order dashboard. You'll see that these Slack conversations actually get tagged right here. So you can see that this Slack conversation that I'm having and the reply, you can see that there's actually a reply now that's associated with it. So any conversation you're having on Slack comes back here, right? The way we see people use this is in a lot of different ways. This is like for me to go back and see, have there been issues associated with the table? But for example, if you're also having conversations about what does this metric mean or pieces like that, that conversation that's happening in a social tab can actually come back into your same ecosystem and continue to populate your 360 view as you go along. So now this seems like one way that I could have basically solved my problem. So it looks like the first thing that I looked at looked like there was an Airflow DAG failure. So possibly that was what was the issue with this. However, there could be a bunch of different reasons why a number could be off. So let's, for a second, imagine that that might not have been the case. Maybe it wasn't the Airflow DAG failure because of which the number was missing, right? Now I can go back to this dashboard and actually start looking at semantic and business context that's associated with it. So what you can see here is you can see, hey, there are business terms like customer acquisition cost. Have we actually made a change in the way that we measure customer acquisition cost inside the org? I click on customer acquisition cost. Now you see that the asset profile for customer acquisition cost comes up. And I can see there's actually my colleague Chris has left an announcement here saying that there was a calculation change that happened here where we moved from a particular mode to a different mode of calculation. We have something called a README, which is a lot more granular in terms of being able to go in and figure out what the calculation was from a simple method to a complex method. From here, what you could do is you could basically actually start going a little deeper. So I can say, okay, if I want to actually start figuring out, is the calculation change the reason why it broke? Atlan has something called query as an asset. where the actual calculation, so we go from what we've realized with semantic layers is that semantic layers, like that calculation thing is like really cool. But you know what, like the reality is that as a day-to-day data practitioner, like the chances of someone actually going and typing out this like really cool formula and being able to figure that out to the data layer is a really big challenge, right? So what we've done is we've tried to actually map the semantic layer to your actual data layer. So what I can do here is I can go in and see, okay, these are all the data assets that are associated with the term customer acquisition costs. And I can see there are actually 2 queries, one of which is a verified query, one of which is actually a deprecated query. Once I click on this query, this actually opens up a query workspace, which is a saved query workspace. Behind the scenes, this is actually going back. So if it's a Databricks table, it's actually going back and hitting Databricks directly from a compute perspective. If this was a table that was coming from another source, it would go back and hit that from a compute perspective. So what I can do here is I can actually just go in and directly run this query. I can see what my SQL, my SQL select statement associated with it is, how this was different, and it's going back, hitting the query, and it'll come back and give me my results of my CAC right here. So if I want to go one step deeper and see how did the formulas actually change over time, I can actually go run this for my simple versus complex. Now assume I was not a data engineer doing this, and if I was a business user, we actually have the ability, we actually have the ability to actually add a layer on top of this from a saved query perspective, where simple things like filtering, pivots, aggregations, things like this can also be built in here, where as a business user, I can go in and actually start joining my data, running quick groupings, saving this. And so one of the use cases we've really seen for this is as you start opening up your data assets to other end users in your org, your goal is that you try to create as much of a self-service environment as possible, right? You want to make sure that you're basically just building products and shipping products. Your end user should be able to take it. If something's broken, they should be able to verify it directly there in that dashboard. If they want to dive in a little deeper, they can go into something like a saved query asset and play around with it a little bit to actually figure out if this was what broke and pieces like that. So now what I could do is I could say, okay, looks like another reason for this is that actually my query itself changed in the process, right? And what I could do is I could basically share this query. So let's say I go back, I copy this link, go back to the conversation I was having with my boss, and I could basically say also the calculation seems to have changed. And so just like that, all of your context and conversations you're having on a daily basis start coming back into this overall flow, and you actually start taking things like Lineage and context and catalogs and making it something that you can use as a part of your day-to-day workflows and really activate it to start making your data team work better. I'm going to end with just a few other, in my biased opinion, cool things that we do here. So what you can see here is you can actually start seeing that as you start thinking about adding in context, this is where we've tried to bring in a ton of intelligence into the way that you do this. So what you can see here is with something like customer name, it actually, like this is our bot that's suggesting things like, this is actually a full name of the user, and I can apply it right here. Each of these tables would basically have a set of columns that are associated with it. I can start saying, hey, these are all, like, let's pick customer mobile. This is an automatic column description focus and things like that. So one of the things we've tried to do as you think about your asset profile is say, how do you programmatically and automatically bring in context from all the tools you're using in your ecosystem and build an intelligence layer on top of that. You'll see that we actually auto-classify things like PII. So you'll see customer name is actually auto-classified as PII. What this means is that when I jump in to an individual table, so let's open up this table, you'll actually see that we start applying things like masking directly to this. So I'm actually just opening up the sample data view here. You'll see that customer name and customer mobile now is masked for anything that's mapped as PII. What we've seen with this is that Atlan were fundamentally open by default. So once you build a layer of context on top of Atlan with things like PII tags, which are auto-detected, Some of the use cases we've seen are people actually take these APIs back and integrate it into their day-to-day workflow. So for example, a PII tag can propagate across Lineage, or confidential if it's marked as a tag for your HR data. It can propagate across Lineage all the way down to your BI layer. You're able to take that back, move it in from an API perspective, and integrate it into your day-to-day flows as a team. So I'm going to pause there. I hope that gives you a quick glimpse of what we do at Atlan. I'm actually just going to, I know we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up for questions from here.
Thank you very much. Prakalpa, all right. Do we have any questions from the room?
I'm going to wait for this microphone to turn on so that everyone at home can hear this question.
Yeah, 1 minute. I'm just took some notes, so.
Oh, sure.
Because I have a ton of questions, actually 2 questions. So first of all, congratulations for the tool. It's kind of very amazing tool, so congratulations on that. So I have 2 questions. So first question is, I'm still not clear for me, so what is the kind of partnership that you have between Atlan and Unity Catalog? It seems like you explained very well the tool itself as a kind of a autonomous tool, but it's still not clear for me where are the point of contact between Unity Catalog and Atlas. That's the first question that I have. The second question that I have is like, in terms of incident management, so you show how you can, people can like pull up issues that they have for you to do the tracking, etc. My second question is like, do you have any kind of, in the tool, in Atlan, any kind of integration with data observability to understand if there is some bad data or there is a problem with the freshness of the data to integrate it here? That's 2 questions. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great question. Well, should have addressed that. So the way we work with Unity Catalog, so the biggest challenge that existed in data lake ecosystems like Databricks was that it was really hard to get to automated column level lineage across your ecosystem. And so what Unity Catalog makes extremely simple is that they actually expose column level lineage. So what you saw in the demo, where you saw us going deeper into the Databricks ecosystem, table to table, column to column, how that connection happens, we actually just directly pull that from the Unity Catalog APIs to make that happen. And then what Atlan adds as a layer on top of that is how does that connect to Tableau? How does that connect to your source system and Fivetran? How does that connect to Airflow? How does that connect to DBT? That's the layer that we add to actually give you an entire map across your ecosystem. To answer your second question, which is about how do we integrate with data quality, data observability, ecosystems like that. So what you'll see in Atlan, we have this concept that we call custom metadata, where what you could do is you could actually go in, and these are native integrations where you can bring in custom metadata fields from any of your tooling in the ecosystem. So for example, from a quality and observability space, we've had customers that integrate us into, on one side, tools like Great Expectations or Soda. On the other side, tools like Monte Carlo, where we're actually bringing in your observability or your quality tests, your results, all of that, bringing it into the same ecosystem from a 360 perspective, and then helping expose that to your end users or your business users through our integrations with live dashboards and pieces like that. Does that answer your question? Awesome.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes, eager question over here.
Hey, so I noticed that tables views, generated columns were in there, but do y'all have any support for streaming sources and as part of the lineage?
By streaming sources, do you mean?
I mean like Kafka.
Kafka or something like that?
Yeah.
Not yet, but it's in our roadmap. So hopefully you will see an update from us. Actually, let me rephrase that. Not yet natively. What I mean by that is that Atlan, so one of our core goals in setting this up is almost this goal of like 30 minutes to AHA, where you should be able to go in and set this up without needing an engineer in just a couple of seconds. So what you should be able to do is go in, choose a package that you need to set up, run it, add in your credentials, and within 30 minutes, you should get your Atlan workspace up. So that's a native integration. We also have a fundamentally open by default ecosystem behind that, which runs through APIs. So any asset in Atlan is actually something that you can customize. So for example, we have customers that actually use APIs as an asset, which they've created fundamentally in the Metastore. And second, they use APIs to pre-populate that. So actually, so you could do Kafka through a open API type integration. But our goal is that you should not need engineering resources to set this stuff up, right? Engineering resources are really the most needed inside a data org in some ways. So natively, you'll see updates from us soon.
Okay, wonderful. I think that's all we have time for today. I do want to say a reminder for everyone that is here in person, Atlan does have a booth downstairs. So if you have many, many more questions, please go and ask them. And for everyone that is at home, there is a virtual booth on the app. You can also set up questions and speak to the team there. So if you have more questions, please keep those things in mind. I'd like to once again say a big thank you to our presenters. If we can have another big round of applause, please.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And as a final reminder, please use the feedback section on the app to tell us, frankly, how much you like this talk. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.